So what's the core problem that's presented in the budget?
Well, there are a number of really essential problems. The first is that we continue to have a very, very high deficit, almost $40 billion. That means we're spending more than we can. Secondly, we've got a very rapidly rising debt problem, $320 billion at the Commonwealth level alone. $12 billion a year just to pay off the interest bill. That's money we can't spend on hospitals, on roads, on trains, etc. The next problem is that we actually have bad outcomes. So we're spending money, but our education results are going backwards. We're wasting a lot of money in health. But the really essential problem is that our Parliament is gridlocked on this. This has been going on for a long time and we haven't been able to get an agreement to do something about it. That means we run the risk of having our AAA credit rating taken away from us. What will that mean? Well, that means that every time we borrow money for a new road or a new rail system, whether it's in the public or the private sector, we will pay more for every dollar of debt because we lose that AAA credit rating.
So what are the options for dealing with that?
Well, of course, the most sensible option is for the Parliament to agree a strategy to put our budget back in order. The first thing, part of that strategy, would be to agree some rules. How much tax are we willing to spend? How much extra spending can we actually afford? The second thing they need to do is to get a medium-term strategy to improve the quality of our spending in education and health. We are wasting a lot of money there, and they are very, very fast-growing areas of the budget. And we could slow the rate of growth in those big spending items and get better outcomes for our citizens. The third thing as part of that strategy, pass the bill that's before the House, pass the omnibus bill, and finally, of course, get a strategy to grow the economy, because if we're not actually growing the revenues by a faster growing economy, we're not actually fixing the problem over the long term. So we have to be on a number of fronts. Of course, the alternative to that sensible approach, which is what we are recommending, is that we tax our way out of it. Well, if we have a deficit of 3% of our gross domestic product, that would mean every single household in Australia would have to pay an extra $5,000 a year on tax. And I'm sure most Australians would say, I think I could spend that $5,000 much more sensibly. Or we cut services and cut spending. We have to make dramatic cuts. Now, 3% of our gross domestic product is $50 billion. Imagine cutting $50 billion quickly. That means someone's pension is cut dramatically. We don't want that. We don't want that kind of change. We have to now tackle this problem. Or we let a thing called bracket creep happen. That is, people move into higher rates of taxation. Well, that'll mean that over half of Australians are in the top tax bracket. None of these things are actually going to be acceptable to the Australian people. So we say to the Parliament and the gridlock, get a strategy, get our budget back under control.
But do Australians have to have worse services?
Absolutely not. The best thing to do is to have better services at a lower cost. We have to stop wasting money in health and education. We've spent a lot of extra money in education, but our results are going backwards. We used to be number 2 in the world for mathematics. Now we're 17. How can that happen? We actually have to get better outcomes, and we actually have to get them at a lower cost, because taxpayers want value for money.
Something that people are going to be looking at particular budget measures is, are they fair? How should people think about that?
Well, fairness is, of course, a very important thing, and we want the budget to be fair, but what does it really mean to be fair? Well, it means that we have to make sure the people who need government assistance the most, the people who have no choices, the people who are very sick, the people who are disabled and can't work, people who are old, they have to get an adequate income from the welfare system. And the problem we've got is that we've given bits and pieces to everyone. We have to make sure that the people who need it the most get the things that they need. But the most important thing about fairness is to ask this question: is it fair to kick this can down the road and have crippling rates of taxation because we couldn't get our act together? Is it fair to have dramatic cuts to services in 5 or 10 years' time because we couldn't get our act together now? Is it fair to say to the Australian people, we can put that off into the never-never because everything will work out? It won't work out. That, to me, is the greatest unfairness of them all, to kind of fool the Australian people that we actually don't have to do something now.
Jennifer, thanks for your time.
Thank you.